So the next stage after roasting your cocoa beans is to separate the husk from the nib. What I've got here is a pound of cracked roasted cocoa nibs, along with the husk in them. Our job here is to separate that husk in a reasonably efficient manner. What I'm going to use here is a bowl and a blow dryer. We'll be flipping it, blowing off the husk, and you'll see it in a minute. For myself, I've actually got to put this dust mask on, and it's something you may want to consider. After doing, a few 100 pounds of nibs, I started to notice some constriction in my lungs. And what I basically ran it down to is something called a variation of like baker's lung. Bakers often breathed flour all day long and developed some pretty serious asthma. I was finding I was getting the same thing. So I've got a hard, fast rule of always wearing a dust mask now when I winnow by hand. And it's actually why I went on to invent a couple different winnowers, the Silph and the Ether, was because I just couldn't keep up, and this was arduous. So anyway, on to some winnowing. Isn't it fun? All right. And there you go. Minute and a half later, about a pound of nibs. That's about it. Thank you. Okay, we're back inside from winnowing. The question I often get asked is how much husk has to come out. People like to be perfectionists, and that's laudable. But I like to say I'm lazy. I don't like to do more work than I have to do. So I get enough of the husk out, and I advocate you getting enough of the husk out that it doesn't affect your chocolate in a negative way. And so what I want to show you is we've collected the husk back together so you can see how much is there, how much nib is there comparatively, and how much I find acceptable. So generally speaking, out of, let's say, let's use nice even numbers. So out of 10 pounds of beans, even though that's not what we have here, they're just easy numbers to work with. Out of 10 pounds of beans, you can reasonably expect to get 80% out of that. So 8 pounds of beans. So 20% of that is husk. So that's what these proportions are. We've got the 80% yield, we have 20% waste. And if you look at it, the husk is a whole lot fluffier. The beans are a lot more dense. And people tend to overestimate to quite a degree how much husk they have in. Whereas when you actually weigh it out, there's not that much there. To give you an idea, again, same proportions here. Here's that 80% recovery. If we left in 5% husk, it looks like this, which is quite a bit. You can see that. And at the 5% level, you start to affect the flavor. You might feel, it's a little coarser, it's not quite as creamy. You may or may not taste it. And I'll look at it and go, yeah, that's just too much to have in there. Alternatively, this one here is 0.5%. It's pretty much the industry standard. I think it's actually legislated that there shall be no more than 0.5% husk left in the chocolate. Don't quote me on that. I think that's about what it is, though. But again, it's a good bit there. Then we have what I just winnowed here. I haven't picked through it yet, and I usually don't pick through. I take my time with the winnowing, so I don't have to do that. But, you know, there's a few pieces here. You know, I can look and see. I can pick through just a little bit. You know, there's a couple, few. Sitting here, there's another. And on a quick look, you know, I'm having to start now. There we go. I'm having to start really search for these things. And that's it. I've got 5 pieces of husk there. I mean, there's probably, you know, 5 more. But compared to the 0.1%, there's maybe, or excuse me, compared to 0.5%, there's less than 1/10% there. You're never going to taste it. You could well expend a lot more effort, and the chocolate's not going to taste any better. So have fun with this. You don't have to spend an hour picking through this. And I've actually made chocolate these ways. And so I've tasted these, and you know, it was amazing how not bad, you know, wasn't excellent, but how not bad the 5% was. So basically what I'm coming down to is relax, enjoy the process. Leave a little bit in, learn from it. You want to get, you know, a little more obsessive about it at some point, or if it makes you happy, do it. But there's no harm in it. It's well roasted. It's not going to cause you any problems. All right, thanks. All right, so if you've gotten tired of hand winnowing with a bowl and a blow dryer, this is probably your next step up. It's an automated winnower, or semi-automated, I should say. My name for it is the Sylph Winnower. What you do is you're going to feed cocoa beans into this. They're going to come down here. This slope and this constriction is going to slow them up a little bit. They're going to hit a little deflector plate in here, slow up again, and they're going to get to this point. At this point, you've got a vacuum running that hooks into here. You know, go ahead and put that in. It's a reasonably small, probably the smallest you can find, shop vac, you know, little 1 horsepower. It's actually pretty easy to overwhelm this. It doesn't need a lot of airflow. So this will be creating a vacuum in this chamber down here. So what's going to happen is it's all sealed up, and it's going to pull a vacuum here. The result of that is that when the husk and nibs hit this area, the lighter husk is going to be pulled up and over and down into this bucket. The clean nibs are going to fall out here. You know, and then there is a couple fittings down inside this bucket that keep the husk down at the bottom, and you've got a clean airflow coming out. So you get to winnow in kind of a dust-free zone. Really kind of nice. Before you use it, and you'll get a feel for it each time you use it, but you've got to tune it. We've got 2 different regulation valves on this that affect how much husk comes through. And these are in there because, you know, not all of you are going to have the exact vacuum I have. Vacuums change over time. They can clog. They can just decrease in power. And so you need some control over it. The 2 valves in question are the vacuum regulator, and it's basically just a controlled leak. You know, we slide a hole here, open and closed. And then this other one I call a discriminator valve. And what it does is changes the balance of how much husk and nib come over. If you were to close the discriminator valve completely, and, you know, for that fact, close the vacuum completely, what you're going to probably get is a really strong vacuum down here at the base. And the result is very few nibs. You're going to lose, you know, you're going to pull over all the husk. There's going to be no husk coming in your bowl. But you're also going to not get much nib recovery. With that, the first thing you're going to do is, you know, start opening, and I usually recommend about halfway open for both of these valves, just to get a feel for what it's going to look like. And we're going to run this in a moment, and I'll show you. And depending on what comes out in the bowl will be how you change these valves. You can do it by eye. It's a nice way to do it. In the manual, there's actually a very systematic, iterative, mathematical way you can do this. And the short of it is I always recommend putting 10 ounces of nibs through. It makes the numbers really easy. You put in 10 ounces of nibs. If you get 8 ounces of nibs, you've got 80% recovery. 82 is virtually perfect, and you're good to go. You've tuned it. If you, for instance, though, get 90 or 9 ounces of nibs, there's probably a good ounce of husk in here, and you need to increase the vacuum by closing the valve some. So anyway, let me show you a little bit, and we'll walk through some of that tuning. So again, I want to just close it up to show you worst case scenario. Both valves are closed, and I'm going to put through some of these cracked nibs and husk. Because this isn't automated, it's semi-automated, you're the semi-automation, you can't just dump these in. They're going to come down as a bulk, they're going to clog, and they're not going to separate. So you need to get a routine going, get a feel for this, and get them in a steady stream, and it's going to separate better for you. So here we go. I don't have 10 ounces here, just a scoopful to show you what's going on. Now, the thing to show you here is we have perfect nibs here. Unfortunately, out of that entire scoop, I have maybe 30%, maybe 40% of nibs. So we're getting half of what we should. We need 80%, which means, as I said, the vacuum is way too strong. So again, I'm going to go ahead, and you just do this back and forth, and we're going to go ahead and open it up halfway. And same thing, I'm going to go ahead and open up the discriminator valve halfway. And we're going to run it again and see what it looks like. So, get my scoopful. All right, so for this one, what we ended up with is actually a good bit of husk. I've been using my vacuum a lot. I'm almost probably positive the filter's a little bit clogged, but I can adjust for that. So if I do, again, I'm eyeballing this, but you could totally do this by, weighing it. So that said, I probably have all the nib that I needed, but I've probably got an extra 10% of husk. So it only pulled out 10%. It pulled out half the husk that I needed. And and the whole purpose of this is to run it through in one pass. You could go two, but the goal and the design, and it does work, is to do one. So just, for again, doing this quickly, I'm going to dump that there, and we'll do one more. So we're going to split the difference. I'm going to close it 3/4 closed, 1/4 open. It's going to increase my vacuum. And let's see what that looks like. Again, another full scoop. Okay, that is virtually perfect. I don't see any husk. I'm going to check this. So I'm eyeballing that, but that looks like about 80%. And it looks really good. Not the trick, but the next thing you check now. So we're almost done. It looks good. We want to verify. You could do, if you were doing weights, you'd have the verification. We'd put in 10 ounces. If you had 8 ounces here, you'd be done. You wouldn't have to do what I'm going to show you next. What I'm going to show you, though, is And I'm going to have to do this a second time for you, because what I'm looking for is how much nib got pulled over. So we're going to open this up. Come on. It is a tight seal. So to actually, you know, if we look in here, as it turns out, well, okay, as I said, we have to run this again because we have a good bit of nib from that very, very first run. So we can't really tell anything from this. So I'm just going to dump it out. We're going to put it back together. And then we'll see if the settings are where we need them. That's back on. Get our vacuum back in. And I know this seems maybe a little laborious, but you'll get a quick idea from your setup, your vacuum, where these need to be. So this is like the first time, and expect to take 15 minutes to a half an hour that very first time you're learning to use this and getting the principles down. After that, it's almost on the fly you can do this. So. Okay, and again, now we're going to check this. And what we're looking for is there nib in here? Set that down. And no, we have pure husk, which tells us all the nib is here, all the husk is here. What that means is we don't need to move that discriminator valve. If we'd had nib here, we'd want to open that discriminator valve some more. And it's just empirical from what I discovered, just how it works. In that we have just husk, you know, just pure husk right there. We're all tuned. That's it. All right, so if you run into any problems, you know, you can always email me. And aside from that, again, all of these instructions are in the manual. And if you want to run them by the numbers, which is how, you know, it's pretty good to do it the first time. You can actually see it instead of guessing. That's what I'd recommend. So happy winnowing. Let's go take these nibs and make them into liquor and make some chocolate. Thanks.